Well, good morning and welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. We don't do it every week, but we try to do it 20 to 30 times per year. My name is Patrick Halstead, and today I have Jimmy Risch with me. Jimmy and I are going to show you some new interesting developments. Before we get started, I've got a quick poll for everyone. And Jimmy, let me know if you can hear me okay. I'm just going to launch this poll here. Are you still using InfoPath? And we're talking about a few cracks appearing in the browser support today, and we'll talk more about that in a second. We just want to run this poll real quick. And so it looks like we've got some of you are here, even though you're not using InfoPath anymore. Great, thanks. I guess we're about most of you are off of InfoPath. You're using hopefully Qdabra Forms, but we still have some people using InfoPath Designer, which makes sense because we launched Forms Designer 1.0 recently, but it's there's some things that we still need to go back to InfoPath Designer for. So great, thanks for answering that question. Let's see, Jimmy, I assume my audio is okay. Let me know if you can hear me okay.
Yeah, sounds fine.
So before we get started and talk about this latest development, I just want to remind people of how long it's been since Microsoft announced that InfoPath was going away, and that was January 30th, 2014. Actually, in September of 2013, almost 9 years ago, actually more than 9 years ago, we actually heard about the likelihood that it would be discontinued. And what's quite ironic is that we planned this webinar this week based on a couple of customers we had who were seeing some anomalies. We had a customer in July that came to us and said, well, we've got this problem. We have these forms and the rich text and multi-line isn't working. And it turns out it's because of the browser changes, Microsoft discontinuing support for Internet Explorer. There's a workaround. We'll talk about that in a second. But the backdrop for this webinar today is we've got these customers that are seeing these problems, and this is the first time we've seen some cracks in quite a while. Microsoft has kept InfoPath alive, both in SharePoint Online and SharePoint On-Prem, but they've been trying to get rid of it. And so they actually, in 2016, they stopped forms that have code online, still work on-prem, obviously. And then 2018, we had some bugs in the designer, some error messages that weren't formatted correctly. There was a workaround for that. They restricted limits on publishing, so you timeouts basically. If you have a really large form, you couldn't publish that anymore. In 2020, obviously MFA is becoming adopted, multi-factor authentication, and that caused more issues with the designer. And there are workarounds. You can go to the registry and set something, and no problem. And then also SharePoint Designer workflows stopped working if you had 2010. And they still have 2013 working, but those will probably be retired shortly as well. And then finally, this summer, we've seen browser support. June 22nd, I believe, is the date that Microsoft discontinued support for Internet Explorer. And that meant that everyone had to use Edge. But there are these problems with Edge, and you have to run in Internet Explorer compatibility mode to get around. So we're going to talk more about those. We're going to show those. In fact, real quick, let's just do a quick demo, Jimmy, and I'll make you presenter so you can show this issue. And then don't show the Forms Viewer version of it yet. We'll just talk about the issue. So there's the baton.
Okay, so here we are in a library. I've published the form here, and there's a document that's been submitted. It's a very simple form. So we open it up, and we see a couple of things. First of all, we've had a customer report that they weren't able to download attachments from their forms in the browser in SharePoint. I wasn't able to observe this. We can download them fine. It shows this pop-up, and in some browsers they have a pop-up, not that kind of alert, but like when it tries to open a tab, sometimes you get an alert up here saying it tried blocked a pop-up. I did see that once in Edge when I tried to download that, so I'm thinking maybe the person who reported that saw something like that but didn't notice it. But for the moment, downloads continue to work. Rich text works fairly well for the time being. But one issue is that I can go in here and change the font a bit, and type. And you'll notice that the new text I added, it's not underlined, it's not courier, it's just the same style as what I was already in. So that seems to be an issue that the rich text boxes are having. Now I can highlight the text and apply styles to them. Oops, and apply styles to them that way. So now the courier, underline, and that works. But changing the style and then typing something, that doesn't seem to work anymore. If it ever did in these browsers, which I'm not exactly sure of. Now, one more thing is the multi-line text boxes. So what we've found out is that they don't support word wrapping for whatever reason. So if I have some text here, the text is supposed to wrap when it reaches the width of the control, but it's not doing that. It's actually just making the editable portion wider and wider without changing the size of the control, of course. So it's basically no word wrap. We still got multi-lines, so at least there's that, but the wrapping doesn't work anymore. So these are the issues we've found recently. And I would add that this may have been an issue that's been here all along. We just didn't notice because people hadn't switched over from Internet Explorer to these newer browsers. And these things worked in Internet Explorer, so that could be the case.
Yep. So if people have questions, please use the questions area. We're going to take questions in a minute. But Jimmy, can you show what, I guess the workaround then would be, obviously, what's incredible is that InfoPath Form Services is still supporting InfoPath, and this is SharePoint Online. This is our 365 tenant. And, you know, it's been 8.5 years since they announced it, and they still have support for InfoPath. And that includes list forms and library forms. And filler forms if you have the MFA configuration done. Jimmy, can you show how to work around this? Now, obviously, our solution is to give you an app, FormsViewer, that allows you to open these existing forms, edit them in any browser. Do you want to show them that quick workaround?
Yep. So most of you probably know we have our own sort of InfoPath platform called FormsViewer, where you can open up your XSNs as is. You can see I've just opened up the exact same file here in FormsViewer, and I can download the file like that. Now you'll notice here the rich text box is actually wider here, and I had to double check that in the form. It turns out that within the form, the box is actually set to 100% width. So FormsViewer seems to be showing it correctly. SharePoint is not. It's showing it as a smaller width. So that's another issue. Not sure what exactly is the story there. You can also see that I can change the font, underline, and that works like expected. You can also see here that the text is wrapping. I can add more text. It wraps like you would expect it to.
Can you
basically all the issues.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so all the issues that we saw in this one over here are not occurring.
And you can save this form. So let's show round trip ability here. If you save this form from FormsViewer, you can open it up in the InfoPath Form Services, right? And it'll show the same data change, right? Yeah. If you could show that.
Come over here and refresh. And yeah, there's the new text I added. And if we scroll over here,
let's look at the scrolling issue.
See that this one is very long.
And since May, we've had Forms Designer out for quite a few years now, a couple of years actually, but we actually decided to call it 1.0 V1 in May. We're doing an update of Forms Designer again this fall, along with FormsViewer. FormsViewer has been out since 2015. Jimmy, can you show them the form opening in Forms Designer?
Yep. So let's just go over to, well, let's back here, please. And go into FormsViewer. Manage templates. There's our template. And open up in the designer. And there it is.
And so you can change it in here and it will continue to round trip just fine, right?
Yeah, well, of course, it's not going to publish back to the library, so those changes won't be reflected in there. And if I do save it to Forms Viewer and create files, then there's going to be a file versioning.
But if you're opening it from Forms Viewer, it's going to it's going to work fine.
If I'm completely exclusively sticking to Forms Viewer,
You want to just maybe change the title and show them that real quick. Change the title and just put some
add an exclamation point, and let's try changing the width here, make it 75. Add a line break. Okay, and then save. And then I can come back in here, refresh. There's a new title, and now you can see it's 75%.
Looks great. Looks great. Cool. Okay, well, I'm going to jump back to my screen real quick, and I know we've got more demo coming from you in a second here, but thanks for those quick show and tells. Any questions for Jimmy? So basically, what we heard from our customers wasn't exactly what we had experienced. We heard that the attachments weren't working. It looked like that was a security pop-up blocker. The rich text controls, well, who knows if they were working before or not, but obviously there's some issues there. Multi-line text boxes as well, and I think that one is maybe the only one that's really new, but it'd be hard to tell because you have to go back to check the historical version of IE. So we've got these workarounds. Obviously, you can use Forms Viewer. We have lots of customers using Qdabra Forms, and that includes Forms Viewer and Forms Designer. And I also want to talk a little bit about data. So what was kind of ironic was that just yesterday, we scheduled the webinar on Monday, and yesterday Microsoft contacts me, and the same guy who talked to me 9 years ago and who kind of hinted that InfoPath was on its way out, the same individual contacts me yesterday, quite coincidentally, to this webinar, and he says, "Hey, I'd like to talk about InfoPath," and like, well, okay, and apparently Microsoft is trying to develop some tools to help people. I'm just guessing, but maybe not. Maybe they're not doing this. But the person wants to talk to me about how to get data out of InfoPath and create tools. I'm guessing to extract data from these very complex forms when you have repeating data and attachments. We already provide tools to do both of these things. In fact, we want to show you one tool today to extract attachments. So if you've got a lot of forms with a lot of like attachments, and you don't want to use InfoPath anymore, well, you can use Qdabra Forms, obviously, and all of those attachments and everything in the forms will continue to work. Or what you can do is you can extract all the data, and then you can use something like Power Platform or some other tool to display the data, or just have the attachments in the library. And that's what I'd like to show next is how we can actually extract those attachments. And Jimmy, I'm going to switch it over to you again to show this clever PowerShell script that you've created. You there?
Okay, so this is a request that's come up a couple of times over the years, and in the past we've had a plugin for our document deployer product that could actually go into SharePoint libraries and sort of process them in place and extract the files out to a library. We haven't used that in a very long time, so it doesn't work with SharePoint Online, but in one other instance, we had made a PowerShell script that does something similar, but just on a file system. We can come in here and look at this document. So it's just a very simple XML document. I've got some files here. These are InfoPath encoded attachments, and these are pictures. And so what I want to do is get these values out and sort of make the files accessible without having to load it up in the form or whatever. So we have this PowerShell script we can use to do that. Now, it's a little bit hands-on to use, but it's not, I'm sure most of you can get it working if you need it. So which basically we've got this command here in the PowerShell script, and we just want to take a look at what it involves. So it's got a source folder. I'm going to tell it where to look for the files. A desk folder is where I want it to put the extracted attachments. There's the my namespace. I need to tell it what the namespace is. Now, if you're wondering how you would know that, you just come in here to this file. Let's see, and you look for near the top of the file. You'll see this XMLNS my, and then what looks like the URL inside it. That's the namespace for this document. So you just put that right in there. Now the attachment Xpath. This is where you want it to look for the files. I'm having it look in two different places. There's a file field which has attachments, and then there's a picture field which has pictures. And I'm turning the word wrap on and off so I can, since these are quite unwieldy. But here with the word wrap off, you can see the files and the pictures. And then one more parameter to this command is the folder Xpath. So you can tell, this is optional, but you can tell it to look inside each file to figure out which subfolder to put them in. That can help you to organize and know which file each of the attachments came from. And I'm just telling it to use this value here. Okay, so now we've got our script right here in the scripts folder. This extract attachments. So I've moved into that folder already using the cd command. Load up the script like this with a dot followed by dot backslash in the name of the file, extract attachments. That sort of loads the function up, and then I can just run it. So take this from here, leave out the lines at the beginning. Okay, so it's telling me it's processing each document very quickly. So now I can come over here. Now we have this output folder, which is where I told it to put them. And so one document had a document ID of 12345. It had 2 attachments, 2 pictures. And then the other one had 1 attachment, 1 picture. There's Clippy. You actually get a, yeah.
Looks pretty fast.
Document.
Have you, and how many, is it like 1,000 per minute, or what's the general, if people have tens of thousands of documents, what's the expectation on how long it'll take to run?
I haven't done any benchmarking, but I would imagine it's probably several dozen. Well, depending on how many attachments there are also.
Right, yeah.
So I would say it's probably 5 to 10 per second. So if you got a ton of files, you might need to leave it to sit for a while, but I'd say it's pretty fast.
Well, that's great. We'll make this tool available as part of the package download for today's webinar. We have just a quick question survey at the end here with a couple questions on it. Any other questions for us? This has been a quick webinar to show you these new techniques for extracting data. We also have a tool that allows you to extract repeating data. We're not going to demo that today. That's a little more involved because you have to extract it. You can extract the data to SQL, you can extract the data to a list in SharePoint or multiple lists. If you're interested in that, please let us know. We have tools to do that. And I just want to do a quick shout out here to our replacement technology, Qdabra Forms, only tool on the market that allows you to migrate your data as is. You don't have to change the XML data. You can just use it as is. You don't have to change your XSNs. You can design the XSNs in Forms Designer. You don't need InfoPath anymore. And you've got us to support you. Any questions for us? I want to thank Jimmy again for preparing the webinar demo today, and Mel Clement to help me with the slides. Hope you guys all have a wonderful day. We will be talking about central flows hopefully next week. We've been preparing this webinar all summer. It's been taking us forever. So we have a new tool that we include in Qdabra Forms called Central Flows that allows you to create workflows using Power Automate or using DBExcel, which is our SQL database technology for scalable forms and scalable solutions. We're going to show a new feature for Central Flows hopefully next week. It might be the week after, but we're trying to get it done for next week, and that is the next webinar. We're going to show conditional triggers, conditional rules using Xpath. Thank you very much for being here today. We hope you have a wonderful day, and talk to you soon. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you.